奇策冷血をもって終わらせましょう。炸裂するは規格一陣。必要な犠牲でした。
Chen Gong is a 2-star caster who can work well as both a strong AoE wave clearer and an incredibly potent buster support for berserkers. He can be a little finicky to use sometimes due to his weird noble phantasm, but he's incredibly powerful when used properly. His first skill, Scapegoat, reduces the critical hit chance of all enemies for 3 turns, and draws their attention to a target ally for 1 turn. This is great for keeping your more fragile party members alive, and for lowering the enemy's damage output. The cooldown is quite short at only 5 turns. His second skill, Tactician's Advice, gives your entire party a defense buff and damage cut for 3 turns. On top of that, it also gives your entire party 10% NP gauge right away. This is the exact same skill that Waver and Rhinos have, although it is slightly weaker. Still, this is a very nifty defensive skill, even if the cooldown of 6 turns means it's only going to be active half the time. His final skill is where things start to get really interesting. It's called Tactician's Cherished Desire, and it's a targetable 50% buster buff that lasts 1 turn. However, if the target is a berserker, it also increases their critical damage by 100% for 1 turn, and gives them an additional 3000 max HP for a turn. Now, if this sounds familiar, it's because those are the exact same effects as Merlin's hero creation skill, and that practically defined the meta for a whole 2 years. Now there's a budget version of it, although it only truly works for berserkers. In fact, the cooldown for this skill is only 5 turns, whereas hero creation was 6 turns. His noble Phantasm, 2-pronged formation, is probably even more interesting actually. It's an AoE arts NP, and it deals frighteningly high damage for how low his stats are. As a matter of fact, Overcharge even further increases the damage. However, it comes with a hefty, but somewhat useful cost. It sacrifices a party member every time you use it. For the record, this NP will always sacrifice the leftmost party member, unless that's Chen Gong himself, in which case he'll pick the middle party member. You cannot use it when you only have 1 party member left. Now, sacrificing a party member might seem like a very bad thing to do. And, I mean, morally, maybe that's right. But for gameplay purposes, it's actually pretty cool if you build your team around it. Essentially, this means that you can just keep cycling in fresh party members, who can buff Chen Gong. Then once they've spent their buffs, you can have them exit stage left, and in comes someone new, and so on and so forth. If you keep doing this, you will eventually get rid of all your enemies, or all your party members, whichever comes first. When you're building a party around Chen Gong, you first got to decide how you want to use him. If he's going to be used as an AoE damage dealer, you'll want a party with plenty of buffers who can make sure he can continuously loop his NP. Good choices here include Tamamanu Maye, Waver, Castergill, and so on and so forth. Most arts buffers will do the trick. If you're using him for buster support, however, you'll probably want to pair him up with someone else who can also buff your main damage dealer, like Hans or Merlin. Of course, you're also going to want an actual damage dealer, preferably a berserker. Thankfully, we already have access to a very strong budget berserker with the ability to draw stars to themselves, don't we? That's right, I'm talking about Mori Nagayoshi, the man himself, the absolute unit. Nah, I'm just messing with ya. Obviously, I'm talking about Asterios. Now, as for craft distances, it depends on how you want to use him. If you're going to be grinding stuff with him, something like Kaleidoscope is a great choice. On the other hand, if you want more powerful damage, you could give him something like Black Grail. Lastly, if you're going to be using him for support instead, he almost definitely wants something that gives stars per turn, like 2030. As for command codes, I feel that Chen Gong can make really great use of something like Da Vinci to further power up his NP, since his face cards do comparatively little damage. He can also use something like Crest of the Stonebird to further power up his allies' crits. Outside of that, generic stuff like Code Bless is perfectly fine, I feel. Overall, Chen Gong's kit is kinda weird, as there's no real synergy between his NP and his skills. However, he can fulfill 2 different roles extraordinarily well, and his damage buffing potential is through the roof. Plus, he can do this.
冷血をもって終わらせましょう。炸裂するは帰化と一陣。必要な犠牲でした。
I cannot overstate how absolutely amazing that felt to do. He's well worth investing in just for that.
働きすぎるな。軍師なのに前に出るな。ですか。それは余計な気遣いです。私は好きで戦場を駆けずり回り、好きで増兵たちと剣を交えているのですから。ですが、そうですね。主からの忠告として受け取っておきましょう。私が倒れては軍議もろくに進みませんでしょうし。